morning, Your Honor.
Mr. Sims, sir, you are reminded you are still under oath, and Mr. Scheck, you may continue with your nice time cross-examination.
Okay. Oh, you can't hear anything, but I did. Okay. So I just played a little bit of that video. Was I freaking muted that whole time? Please don't say I was muted that whole time. It doesn't matter. I'm not muted now. So, okay. It didn't work, but normally when you play a little bit, it'll drop this back down to 0. So no matter where we stop at, these will all be read, but the video that we're on will only be half played or partially played. So as long as we stop the stream in the middle of any of these videos and not at the very beginning. So I was muted. What I was trying to say is the cats pressed play yesterday. We are on June 1st, but look, all of these videos were played yesterday, unfortunately. So we have to try to remember where we're at every day, just until we get to June 7th. Which stinks, because we're going to get confused. We might not get confused. We might remember. We know we're on June 1st today, because we know where we are. But anyway, here we go. And you should be able to hear starting now.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Mr. Sims, just a few more questions. We left off yesterday when we were talking about Dr. Blake coming into your lab and documenting the evidences. You received it with photographs before you altered it and taking pictures of the test results. You recall that?
Yes.
Now, you issued your first major report on the results of your work on January 4th.
That was the first major report, yes, was on January 4th of 1995.
And of 1995?
Yes.
And that was after the jury selection had been completed in this matter?
I don't know when the jury selection was actually completed. I know
You doing tests as the test of this trial continued, did you not?
Yes.
And you issued a second major report on April 6, 1995.
He actually sounded better when that was going on. He was this much less annoying. Hi, Sheena. Welcome.
Yes, I believe that is the correct date, April 6th. Yes, it.
Wow, it looks like Kona's video is having issue with this part of the trial. Hold on. I'm just looking. Okay, it looks like they fix it right about here. Yeah.
It can be, yes.
Still
I'd agree.
still less annoying than those damn lawyers. I don't know. I don't want to press play because we're at a good spot right now. All right, let's go. Let's listen to these lawyers. I know they suck.
That the difficulty of such a challenge is increased when the bloodstain mixture consists of primary contributors and a number of unknown lesser contributors.
Well, sometimes if you see primary contributors, then it's a little easier. I would say it's more difficult when they're all equal. That could be more difficult to sort out than if you see a distinct, say, two of these dots that tend to go together and then two other dots that tend to go together because they're weaker. Those are actually perhaps easier to sort out than when all the bands are equal.
And I believe you also said on redirect that when you have such a mixture in bloodstain evidence, that it's important to look at as many different markers as you can.
Well, some markers are more informative, certainly, in sorting out mixtures than others. So the more markers you have, the more you can tend to sort it out.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention to your analysis of the blood smears found on the console in the Bronco.
Okay.
You have that in mind, sir? And
Yes.
you may want to consult your report.
Okay.
Looking at all the data, did you not reach the conclusion, in terms of the DNA you found, that Mr. Simpson could not be a minor contributor to any of the blood found on the console. You did not characterize him as a minor contributor with respect to any of those stains in terms of the DNA types found.
Rephrase the question.
All right. In your report, you came up with three kinds of categories to characterize the level of contributions that you attributed to various different DNA patterns, did you not?
Yes.
One was minor contributor.
Yes.
The other one was main contributor.
Yes.
And then there was another in-between category of contributor.
Yes.
You couldn't say whether that... now, with respect to Mr. Simpson, on all the different swatches off that console, you never characterized the DNA pattern there consistent with Mr. Simpson as being a minor contribution.
Yes, that's correct.
In fact, your findings say that the genotypes consistent with Mr. Simpson was the only one found on stain number 30 of the console,
Yes.
and that you characterized the DNA types on the DQ alpha and D1S80 system consistent with Mr. Simpson as being the main contribution to item 31,
Yes, with the DQ alpha.
and the main contribution to item 305.
The only complication there is 305, you recall on DQ alpha, we had the possible 1.2 allele on that. There was a little bit different interpretation, because in that case, the 1.2 was the possible.
But your report characterizes that he could be the main contributor to stain 305. Those are your words.
Now, this is with regards to
305.
to 305. No, I think in that one, we listed him as contributor. If you look at the verbiage in the report, he's listed as contributing, as well as contributing to DNA 30, which is 305.
And with respect to the person who contributed the 4 allele to stains 31 and 305, you characterized as minor contributor.
Yes.
Just a few questions on controls. Would you agree that with respect to contamination due to the handling of samples or PCR carryover contamination, that such contamination can be signaled by the appearance of product in blank controls and of mixed or inappropriate types in samples and in positive controls?
Sustain.
All right? Let's take it step by step then. Contamination due to handling. Can it be signaled by the appearance of product in blank controls?
Yes.
Can it be signaled by the appearance of mixed or inappropriate types in samples?
Yes.
Can it be signaled by the appearance of
Let's just look, because I think we're almost done, guys. I know we've been on this forever, and it feels like we're never going to get out of this part with the DNA and everything. But this is the new witness right here. We are right here. Marsha and Johnny are right here, which means Shek, I don't know who that is. Shek is almost done. It's maximum an hour and 20 minutes here. Oh, I don't have the speed. I'm putting the speed on to 1.25. So, an hour and 20 minutes here, an hour and 30 minutes here, and then 48 minutes here. So it looks like today and maybe part of tomorrow, we're done. We're out of the freaking DNA, maybe, unless this witness right here is a DNA expert. Which I guess he could be. Or he could be a dog expert. Or he could be a fancy coins expert. We don't know. But we do know that we are almost done with the B team. We are this close. We've come so far. So get through it today.
Product in positive controls.
I'm not sure I understand, by the appearance of product in
Yes,
positive
in other words,
controls?
in the DQ alpha system, for example, it would be dots sliding up.
In other words, if the wrong dots light up in a positive control,
Well, you say wrong. Dots light up that are not expected or inconsistent with interpretation.
yes, that could be a signal of that.
For example, in your lab, you have a positive control you run for DQ alpha that's 1.14.
Yes,
You run that in every case.
yes, we do.
So the expected genotype you see when you run the strip is 1.14.
Yes,
And if you see a dot light up at some intensity, and I understand that in your lab you have gradations, you have hints, you have traces, right?
yes. As far as, for example, looking at cross-hybridization type signals, yes, we characterize those.
Could be cross-hybridization, some instances could be contaminants.
In other words, could a very weak signal be due to contamination? If that's all the information you had, then yes, that's true.
Now, you agree that these negative and positive controls should be used rigorously?
Yes, I agree with that.
And do you agree that these controls are important for monitoring general contamination in a laboratory, not just the results of any particular test or experiment?
Yes, in other words, you monitor these on an ongoing basis for the entire laboratory. Is that the question?
Yes.
I would agree with that.
And if a blank control is positive in one experiment, does it not indicate a potential problem not just for that one test or experiment, but for any test performed at about the same time?
Well, again, I think what one would do would be to try to determine what the cause of a particular signal on a blank was, and that may be isolated so that one would know that that's only due to a specific instance and not a general contamination phenomenon.
Just so that we're all clear on this, when we're talking about, for example, in the PCR system, you run a tube, right? A series of tubes.
Yes.
And for example, in this case, we've heard sometimes they'll give in numbers like run number 60, run number 61. You have similar labeling in your laboratory.
Well, I actually number with the case number and the item number is how I label.
But let's say if there were, in the number of cases prior to this one, if there were, the controls indicated that contaminants were appearing in a laboratory, that could raise concern about the results in the test in a particular case, even if the controls in the test in the particular case were blank.
Yes, it would raise concern.
And that's true even in a laboratory contaminated with PCR carryover. Blank controls do not necessarily become contaminated on every occasion.
That's true.
Now, would you agree, given the problem of contamination due to handling and carryover, that laboratories must incorporate contamination control into their standard operating procedure?
Yes.
And would you not agree that outbreaks of contamination and the steps to correct the problem should be carefully documented?
Yes, I think those kinds of instances should be reviewed, and it should be the sort of thing where the laboratory takes an interest in what may have happened and track down if possible.
Okay. My last few questions. All right, this is defense 1186. Mr. Yamaguchi's diagram of the glove. Now, Mr. Sims, since we last talked before you came back for the end of your redirect examination, did you have an opportunity to examine the diagram that Mr. Yamauchi made of the glove on June 14th?
I've only seen this briefly in seeing Mr. Yamauchi's testimony, but I haven't studied this diagram, no.
Okay. And let me just ask you a few short questions about the glove.
Okay.
Now, you've discussed the role of substrate controls and how important you thought it was that substrate controls be systematically alternated by the laboratory personnel collecting and handling the evidence.
Yes, in other words, if there are substrate controls along with the stains, then those should be systematically processed, yes.
There were no substrate controls with the glove, were there?
I did not collect any substrate controls with the glove, no. I felt it was, the entire glove had blood in almost all places.
Well, more importantly, but I withdraw that. LAPD didn't take any substrate controls for the glove. You didn't receive any, did you?
I don't know if they did actually select any areas or investigate any areas. I'm not clear on that.
My question to you, sir, in terms of samples you received, did you ever receive any substrate controls for the glove?
Well, again, with the glove, I only received the glove itself. I didn't receive any of the cutouts that LAPD had made from the glove, so I just had the glove itself to work with.
Right. But, for example, you didn't receive any cuttings as substrate controls the way you did, for example, with with other swatches, other items.
That's correct.
Okay. And have you ever seen a photograph of the glove prior to, other than ones at the crime scene? Have you ever seen a photograph of the glove taken in a laboratory setting that reflected its condition before cuttings and alterations were made on it?
I don't recall seeing a photo like that, although I'm having trouble recalling any LAPD lab photos of the glove. I don't see any of their photos of the glove.
Now, could you point out on this diagram the area where you found a piece of tissue?
Would you like me to point out, is that what
Yeah,
you said?
could you just do that?
I have to look backwards here because my notes are with the glove inside out.
There it is. There's the picture of the
thumb
gloves.
side
Oh my God.
underneath this area here, sort of where I'm pointing. In that vicinity.
Now, have you seen, either in a form of a photograph or a document or a drawing or any form of documentation, an indication of where Mr.
Bill.
Fung removed a hair from the glove?
Bill, did you draw those gloves? Be honest. You drew those gloves, didn't you? They are a work of art. They should be in a museum.
Morning of June 14th.
I haven't seen any of that documentation.
So you would have no knowledge as to where or in what area Mr. Fung touched the glove on the morning of June 14th?
Objection, assumes facts not in evidence.
Sustained.
Well, you have no idea what area he removed the hair from.
Objection, it's argumentative.
Right, just rephrase the question.
Right. Do you know where he removed, from what area he removed the hair?
No.
And you're looking at your notes there?
Yes.
In order to figure out what you did and the order in which you did it?
Well, I was looking at it to figure out the exact location as best I could show it on the diagram.
Could we just show that note for a second on the monitor here so the jury has an understanding of what you're looking at in terms of your notes?
Look like the market, huh?
It's very hard to draw hands.
What are these pages from 69, 69, 70, and 71? What do those reflect?
These pages are copies that reflect my actual examination of the glove itself.
And these reflect the examination of...
How can I draw gloves?
G1, G2, G3, and G4?
On a computer
included.
without a pencil. There we go.
Show briefly those diagrams on the monitor if I may. And I'll mark those pages. What were you up to, sorry?
How about the whole package as 1191?
791.
Are those
No.
your shooting, Mr. Schick?
No, no,
Mr.
try.
Schick, are those your original notes?
Those are copies.
Copies. Okay.
I have another copy, and I'll conform.
I'm sorry, 1193.
That's why, guys.
Douglas?
That's why those
1193
gloves
for
are
the
drawn
shooting.
so badly. No, don't save. I just wonder, hold on guys, I just wonder while they're doing that if it would be better to try with your eyes closed.
All right, Mrs. Robertson?
Just focusing on the top for a second. And so that's your diagram, and these are the
It's
kinds
not
of notes
better.
you write that indicate, as you're going along, exactly what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Yes.
All right? And you directed, this is page 71, is it not?
Yes, it is.
All right. Let me just briefly go back and start at page 69. That would be the beginning of your examination,
Yes, that's the beginning of the examination of the glove.
and you noted exactly what you did and who was present, and you made a diagram.
Yes, I did.
And then page 70 is you make the cutouts, you made additional diagrams and listed exactly what you did in the order in which you did it?
Yes.
You've looked at page 71 and, okay, those are the ones that deal with G1, G2, G3, and G4, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Sims, thank you very much. Have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Scheck. Mr. Harmon?
Just a moment, Your Honor.
Certainly.
Mr. Sims,
Let's go.
because you haven't seen a photo of the glove before it was sampled, does that mean to you it doesn't exist?
No,
You just haven't seen one.
that's correct.
Let's start with the mixtures, and I don't intend to ask you specifics about them, but Mr. Scheck asked you questions about the challenge in sorting out mixtures. You recall that just a moment ago?
Yes.
Now, in addition to sorting out mixtures, have you encountered cases where the fact that there's a mixture is of significance to you as a forensic scientist
Yes.
without being able to sort them out?
Yes.
You talked about, in what seems like another lifetime ago, the blood mixture case that you had. You recall that?
Yes, right. I talked about the blood being present from the two different individuals or consistent with the two different individuals.
Where you were unable to sort them out.
Yes, in that particular case, it was not easy to sort them out, as I recall.
Okay. This case is one of those cases, is it not?
Well, I think in particular, when you look at any one stain, that can be difficult to sort out. And to me, I tend to look at the totality of the interpretations.
For example, Mr. Simpson alone could have been the source of number 30 from the Bronco console.
I believe that's correct.
But
Let
you
me-
need to look at your notes.
Let me look
that'd
at
be
my
fine.
notes again. Yes,
But when you move to 31, it wasn't consistent with Mr. Simpson alone. Is that true?
that's correct.
And regardless of your ability to sort it out, was that mixture consistent with two people who had recently been brutally murdered?
Well, it was in 31, for example, it would be consistent with Mr. Simpson, the defendant, along with one of the victims
With one
in
of the
this case.
victims. And in 305, in 303, and 304, that was not a mixture, or that was not a stain that was consistent with Mr. Simpson alone.
That's correct.
It just happened to be consistent, those three stains, with a mixture of Mr. Simpson and two other people who had recently been brutally murdered. Is that true?
Yes, that is correct as far as those three samples that you mentioned.
And just to distinguish between sorting out mixtures, this has nothing to do with sexual assault cases where there is a way to sort out the sperm DNA from the epithelial cell DNA.
That's correct.
When you looked at the glove and when you saw that tissue, you couldn't see that with your naked eye, could you?
When I originally looked in that area of the glove, I looked for, there was a reddish stain in that notch area. And then I looked under the stereo microscope, and that's where I noted that there was a possible piece of tissue. Now, once I knew what that piece looked like, then if I got the light real strong and just right on it, I could see it with the naked eye, but I had to use the strong light to see that.
So what you were able to, or the way you were able to initially visualize it was through the stereo microscope.
That's correct.
And then knowing that it was there, using some other lighting source, you were able to see it with your eye.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about the socks then, in that same process.
Okay.
What did Greg Matheson communicate to you about the socks before you ever examined those socks?
Sustained.
It's not offered for the truth of the matter.
Let me see counsel sidebar with court, please.
We gotta have a sidebar about socks, guys. Another sidebar about socks. Another sidebar. A long one.
All right, thank you, counsel. Mr. Harmon, proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Sims, before you received the socks, item 13, sent from LAPD, Were you made aware that Mr. Matheson had conducted some conventional serological testing on those socks?
Yes,
And when you were made aware of that, were you made aware that the conventional serological testing was performed on blood?
yes,
Then you received the socks.
yes.
Okay, and I want to just go through your initial observations on some of those socks, okay?
Okay.
But before I do that, I'd like you to define for us what you mean when you use the term visible to the naked eye.
Well, in the context of this kind of examination, I'm talking about situations where with the proper kind of lighting, intense lighting, for example, at an angle, you can
Not a
see
number.
contrast with the naked eye. In other words, you don't.
Now you just actually hit your name in a comment without realizing. It's not a number. It's too big to be an actual number. Nan. N-A-N. It's not a number. You couldn't have counted that high. Nobody could. Bill can't even count that high.
Have to look under the microscope if you have the right lighting.
So just to paraphrase it, can we say not aided by some sort of amplification device
Yes, not aided by some sort of amplification device.
or magnifying device?
Yes.
Okay, and is that what you meant when you used that term yesterday?
Yes, in the context of this sock examination.
Okay, so you get the socks, you already know there's some blood on them. Which of the socks did you...
Last statement by Mr. Brown.
Sustain Fred's question.
Okay. When you got the socks, you already knew there was some blood on them, is that right?
Same
Sustain.
objection.
When you got the socks, Mr. Matheson had already told you there was some blood on them.
No, sustain.
When you got the
That's-
socks, you already knew that Mr. Matheson had conducted conventional serological testing on blood on those socks, is that right?
Yes.
Which sock did you examine first?
The initial exam was on the one that turned out to be 42B.
Okay, now, before you looked at those socks, were you aware that there were any markings on the socks?
I'm not sure I understand. Before I looked at them,
Before you looked at them, were you aware whether or not there were any markings on those socks, either A or B?
well, when I first looked at them, it was the markings that caught my eye.
Okay, were you aware that that those socks had previously been marked?
No, I don't believe I was aware that they had been previously marked.
Okay, and you first look at them, you see some markings.
Yes, there were some white against the black of the sock markings.
I believe you said that you looked at B first.
Yes,
Can you describe what first caught your attention when you looked at B?
there was a white outline around one particular area.
Okay. What did you do then after you saw the white outlined area?
I looked at the sock under the stereo microscope.
Okay. At that point, had you noticed any other areas of discoloration on the sock before you resorted to the stereo microscope?
No, the only other marking that I noted at that time was that there was looked like a 10 to 13, like a size indication on the sock.
Okay, and were you looking at the sock, or strike that, this area that was outlined, did you ultimately designate that as a stain area and test it?
Yes,
What area was that?
that was B1.
Okay. Now, and you're looking at it with you were looking at it with the naked eye?
Initially, yes.
Okay, and then use the stereo microscope.
Yes.
What did you see?
Well, I noted that there was some reddish staining in that area.
Now, is that the first time you noticed any reddish coloration?
Yes, I don't believe I saw any reddish until I looked under the stereo microscope.
Okay. At some point, did you then look at the other side of the sock?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and were you using the naked eye at that point?
Yes, I believe so.
Did you notice any apparent discoloration on the other side, opposite of 42B1?
No, the only note that I made was there were no markings on that other side.
And ultimately, you did find some areas of interest on the side that you flipped it over to, is that correct?
This would now be the side opposite of the
Yes.
B1 stain. Yes, I did find some areas of interest.
So, but when you first looked at it with the naked eye, you didn't notice any areas of discoloration,
That's correct.
and there were no markings on that side.
That's correct.
Okay, let's shift to sock A.
Okay.
How did you first examine that sock?
Again, it was just a visual examination.
Okay, no amplification, no magnification?
No, the first thing was just the visual.
You notice any markings on it?
Yes.
Is that what you noticed first?
Yes, I noticed there was some writing, and then there were some arrows that sort of thing.
And what did you notice when you looked at the end of the arrow, the direction the arrow was pointing?
Well, there was, in this particular area, now this was what ended up being called A2. There was some discoloration along one of the logos that is present on this sock.
When you say discolored, are you telling us it was red at that point?
Well, again, it's only when I go to the stereo microscope that I noted the reddish of the stain.
And is that what you did next?
Yes.
Okay, and you could see that it looked red.
Yes, under the stereo microscope, I could see the reddish staining.
And then did you examine the other side of the sock?
Yes, and I'm not sure if I examined the other side and then did the stereo microscopic exam on both, or if I did one side and also looked at the stereo.
Okay.
It's not clear from my notes.
What did you notice when you looked at the other side, the side opposite 42A2?
The side opposite 42A2 had that cutout near the ankle area. It had an arrow, and it looked like it said 13A pointing to that. There was also a cutout down more on the foot where there was a C. This is again in white. This white is used as the marking.
And then did you use the stereo microscope to examine them more carefully?
Yes.
Okay, is that the first, and did you notice that those stains were reddish color?
Yes, again, I noted that with my initial stereo microscopic examination, there was some reddish still in that area around the cutout.
And is that the first time you noticed the reddish coloration when you looked at it with the stereo microscope?
Yes, I believe that was.
And at some point, did you take photos of these stains before you did any cuttings from the socks?
Yes, I did.
Did you use any kind of special lighting for that?
Well, I took some shots to just show the overall socks using floodlights, for example, with a 35 millimeter setup on a camera stand.
And under those, how would you describe that kind of lighting?
These are just intense tungsten light bulbs. They're very intense bulbs that give off a lot of light.
And in taking the photographs of the stains that you've just described, were you then able to see other stained areas on the socks?
Well, once I was at the point where I was taking the photographs and using that intense light, in that part of the process, I noticed some other discolorations on the side opposite of the LAPD cutout on sock A.
And is that the first time you noticed them under that intense lighting?
Sustained. First question.
Is that the first time you noticed those stains when you put the intense lights on them?
Sustained.
When did you first notice those stains? Was it when you put the intense lights on them?
Yes, it was during that process, and it's pretty clear to me from my notes that that is the point at which I noted those additional ones, was after this photography setup.
Yesterday, Mr. Scheck asked you a question about DNA concentration, the difference between concentration from a reference tube that's taken from someone and concentration of DNA in something that comes out of somebody's artery. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Is there any difference in DNA concentration between those two sources?
Objection to the characterization of the questions I asked him. That misstates the questions I asked him.
Sustained. Just asking the general question.
Do you remember the question he asked you yesterday?
Yes.
What was it?
As I recall the question, it was whether or not the blood from a tube, a reference blood tube, would be more concentrated in terms of its DNA than other types of shed blood.
And your answer was no,
My answer was no.
because if it comes out of your artery, it's got the same concentration?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Scheck asked you some vague hypotheticals about inadvertent cross-contamination yesterday.
Why don't you rephrase that question, please?
Do you remember the hypotheticals Mr. Scheck asked you yesterday about inadvertent cross-contamination?
Yes.
And I believe you expressed the fact.
Uh-oh. Finally got something interesting to watch, guys. Don't worry, it ends. There we go.
It is.
Objection
It's
as
also
cumulative.
comment by counsel not conducting the examination as well. Over. Briefly.
Yes, the idea that inadvertent contamination would be expected to be a sporadic sort of thing, so that one swatch may receive some of this contamination, but the other swatches wouldn't. That's the concept.
Okay, now, Mr. Scheck had some questions of you about LAPD items 45 and 51. You recall that yesterday?
Yes, those are the front gate and the hand railing samples, I believe.
Okay. And without going over things again and again, would the fact that there's foliage nearby and soil and biological material, would that be of significant interest to you in deciding whether bacterial contamination could cause degradation?
In other words, if those things in the environment contributed to the material on that substrate, yes.
Sure. Your Honor, I'd like to have marked as people next in order, photograph of that area showing the front gate at Bundy,
291.
291. Oh, it's done both. Mr. Sims, can I put it up on the Elmo here? Mr. Sims, would you look at 291 for identification, and I'd just like you to take in the whole picture there, vegetation, dirt, things like that. You had a chance to look at that?
Yes, I can see that.
Okay, and what can you tell us in terms of potential for biological material contributing bacterial input to any bloodstains that may have been collected in that area?
Your Honor, I have a foundational objection to this from a photograph in this fashion.
Cool.
Well, again, I note that there appears to be foliage overhanging that general area, and that's the main thing that
I'll be right
I
back,
see in this
guys.
photograph.
Be right back.
And is that a potential source for biological material that could contribute bacteria that might contribute to degradation of bloodstains?
Yes, any of that biological material, such as that.
Your Honor, I'm going to show, you might want to cut the feed. I want to show a previously marked exhibit, People's 42, for identification. That's a little more distant shot. You had a chance to look at that, Mr. Sims?
Yes.
Okay, just, I want you to assume that 45 and 51 are from the 45 from the handrail that you can see in the foreground there, or the background rather, and 51 from the bottom part of that gate. And what could you tell us about the potential for biological material contributing to degradation of bloodstains that may be collected in those areas?
Well, as this perspective shot shows, it appears that that gate swings out into an area of vegetation.
Okay. And could that be the source of biological material that could cause bloodstains to be degraded?
Well, again, if there's biological material, then conceivably there's bacterial growth in that area and that sort of thing, yes.
Your Honor, I'd like to have marked as People's next in order photograph of that handrail. And that'd be 292, Your Honor?
292.
And may I put it up on the Elmo?
You may.
Okay, Mr. Sims, assume that's where 110 is item 45 that you just saw in the other photograph. This is just a close-up photograph of that. Okay?
Okay.
Is this the kind of area that might have bacterial or bacteria on it that could impair your ability to type those bloodstains?
Well, again, any surface such as that could have some bacterial growth or some bacteria on it.
Okay, Mr. Sims, Mr. Scheck asked you questions about substrates and similarity of the front gate painted surface and the rear gate painted surface. You recall that yesterday?
Yes.
Is substrate just one factor in determining what might impair your ability to type stains, such as the Bundy walkway stains and such as 45 and 51?
Well, by substrate, for example, if we're talking about a painted metal surface, it depends a lot on what kind of environment, microenvironment that surface is in, actually. If it's near an area where there's more soil and vegetation, that would be different from a cleaner area, basically.
So environment is more important than the substrate?
It can be, yes.
Okay, in fact, 45 and 51 do show the same signs of bacterial-induced degradation as 47, 48, 49, and 52. Is that correct?
Well, I think there were three that we definitely saw that in from the Bundy drops, and it's the same thing that we saw, the same pattern that we saw in 45 and 51.
And does bacteria come, if a person dropped a drop of blood on a clean substrate, would you expect to find bacteria in there?
Well, there are bacteria everywhere in the world. I mean, bacteria are everywhere. It's whether or not the bacteria are placed in a moist environment where they can, warm environment that's moist where they flourish, that's really the issue.
Okay, could there, so would the fact that stains that were collected are already having bacteria on them and put in a plastic bag in a moist condition, how would that impact on the bacteria that's already there?
Well, under those conditions, those bacteria would be thriving. They would be reproducing, growing, and so there would be growth of the culture, and so then that would lead to more degradation of the DNA in the blood.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to have marked as Peoples 292 for identification, a photo of the rear gate at Bundy.
293, I believe.
294 for identification, another photo of the rear gate.
These are June 13th photographs.
Mr. Harmon,
Thank you, Your Honor. Can I put 293 up?
you may.
And 294, we can do it both at the same time. Mr. Sims, I'd like you to take a look at these photos, and I'm going to ask you to assume that they're photos of the rear gate at Bundy where 115, 116, and 117 were collected from July 3rd, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Sims, do you see any signs of the same kind of vegetation in the area of 115, 116, and 117 as you did in 45, with respect to 45 and 51?
Can I actually see that photograph, the lower photograph?
Sure. Could I hand it to you?
Certainly. Want you hand both photographs?
It appears there is a little bit of ice plant in that general area, if I'm seeing this correctly, but it's not as, doesn't appear to be as dense growth as in the front end samples.
Mr. Sims, I just want you to assume, for purposes of this question, that 115, 116, and 117 had been in the same kind of biological environment as 45 and 51,
Okay.
okay? If those stains were dried after collection and not stored in a hot truck in plastic bags for several hours, okay, would you
Okay.
expect the same kind of bacterial-induced degradation as you found in 45 and 51 and 47 and 48 and 49?
No, again, I think the key is to get these samples collected and dried as soon as possible, because it's that incubation period when there's the moisture and the heat that allows for the bacteria to thrive and to the culture to grow, and that leads to the degradation of the blood.
In fact, you didn't see the same kind of bacterial-induced contamination in 115 through 117.
That's correct.
Mr. Scheck asked you a question about systematically alternating between substrate controls and stains just a little while ago. Do you
Yes.
recall that? You feel that is an important safeguard?
Yes.
How important do you feel as a safeguard using only one coin envelope open at a time?
Well, that to me is especially critical, because that is not only a check on cross-contamination, but it also tends to prevent sample mix-up. In other words, there's only one sample that you're dealing with at a time, so you're not likely to mix it with another sample.
And how about only having one microcentrifuge tube open at a time?
Yes, I think that's very important because then the contents of one can't get into the contents of another tube.
Okay, and finally, Mr. Sims, I want you to assume that 45 and 51, 47, 48, and 49 were collected on June 13th.
Okay,
And furthermore, 115, 116, and 117 on the rear gate were collected on July 3rd.
okay.
Okay. Given the different environments in which the group of 45, 51, 47, 48, 49, and 50 were collected from, when
Okay.
compared with 115, 116, and 117, you with me so far?
Yes,
And given the different dates of collection of the two groups of samples,
okay.
okay, is there anything about the differences in the amount of DNA in these stains which tells you scientifically when 115, 116, and 117 were deposited on the rear gate?
I'm going to object to this hypothetical with respect to foundations concerning A, the environment,
That's a speaking
and B,
objection, Your Honor.
well, foundations, well, house,
Foundation.
and time.
Over.
No,
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Schick?
Mr. Sims, some stains on the sock were more apparent than others.
Objection is made. Is the time?
Over.
the only stain that seemed a little bit more apparent to me would be that one that was on the logo that I think we called 42A2. That was more apparent to me. And again, keep in mind, I didn't see A1 until after it was sampled.
But you got the sock, you looked at it, and you saw, visible to the naked eye, red discoloration that you characterized as a blood stain at A1, right?
Made is the time, Your Honor.
Over.
Can you?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
The first time we discussed this on cross-examination, in fact, I think it was on even your direct examination, didn't you indicate that when you looked at sock A1, without the aid of a stereo microscope, you saw, by that arrow, the discoloration that you identify as the blood stain at A1?
Over.
Yes, I think you could see some discoloration in that general area.
And then on that same sock, there is a cutout.
Well, I think what you're saying is the cutout that's adjoining whatever's left.
Yes. There's a large cutout in the ankle area of the A sock.
Yes, there is a large cutout.
And I think you've testified that the material of this sock, and we've seen it, is smooth, silky kind of material.
It's smooth, yes.
And in the areas where you identified blood stains, the material tend to become, in your words, crinkled and puckered.
Yes, in some of those areas it did.
Now, Mr. Harmon asked you questions again about that B1 area of the sock that we saw yesterday under the stereo microscope, correct?
Well, we looked in that general area, yes.
That's the one that everybody got out and looked at under the stereo microscope.
Well, that stain was an unsampled area that was just below B1.
Right. Would it be fair to say that those areas that we spent time looking at under the stereo microscope were the areas where you first identified the stain looking under the stereo microscope?
That states what happened yesterday.
Well, talking about your examination, you've told us that to the best of your recollection, and you're not completely sure of it, there was one stain area that you first were able to visualize under the stereo microscope as opposed to seeing it first with your naked eye without enhancement.
Well, there were several areas that I couldn't see with the naked eye that I could only see with the stereo microscope.
In terms of the ones you sampled, that was the only one that you first saw with the stereo microscope as opposed to looking at it with the naked eye. I'm talking about the ones you cut.
I'm sorry, can you restate that?
I think we have testimony on it. Let me just get to this. The area that we were looking at yesterday under the stereo microscope, would it be fair to say that that was one of the areas that was harder to visualize with the naked eye in terms of seeing the discoloration as opposed to other areas?
Well, again, the only other area that I would say would be easier to see it on would be that one on the logo, that A2 stain.
Okay? And you can't tell us what the cutout area would have looked like in terms of the blood on it before you saw it, because when you got it, it was cut out.
Well, that's right, and that's why I looked at the margins under the stereo microscope, and that's when I saw the reddish in that area.
So there was even reddish in that area after the cutout had been done.
Yes.
And when you look at that fringe area of the cutout with the naked eye without a stereo microscope, you can see the discoloration.
I think there's some subtle discoloration in that area, yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Harmon asked you some questions about the console and the Bronco. Can you tell us the order in which biological material was contributed to the console from your tests?
No.
You can't tell us what biological material might have been on the substrate of the console before what appears to be blood was deposited on it.
That's correct.
Mr. Harmon, I think before I asked you questions about bleeding noses. Do people have runny noses when they have colds?
I do.
Do children have runny noses?
Yes.
Do adults have runny noses?
Yes.
Do people touch substrates on consoles and cars, in your experience, with their hands?
Yes.
Now, in terms of other contributors to the smears on the console, you found other genotypes than Mr. Simpson's.
That's correct.
And from your tests, you can't tell us whether the other genotypes came from one person, two people, or even three people.
That's correct.
And you found, and on the steering wheel, in the strip you looked at, the only dots visible were 1.1, 1.2, and 4.
This is now on the steering wheel sample.
Item number 29. The only dots you saw on the strip were 1.1, 1.2, and 4.
Well, again, the
I'm talking
control
about what
dot.
you saw.
The control dot was present.
And the control dot.
And I believe the all but dot was present.
And Selmark's result is that that was a 1 point, their conclusion was that it was a 1.1, 1.2, and a 4, and they excluded Mr. Goldman.
It is.
Now, Mr. Harmon asked you about single coin envelopes being a good control against cross-contamination and sample mix-up, right?
Yes.
Think it would help in terms of controlling against sample mix-up to count the number of swatches when they're collected and put counts on the coin envelopes and the bindles where they're originally corrected?
Compound, argumentative.
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
Would counting the number of swatches at collection and putting that number on a coin envelope or a bindle, would that assist in terms of guarding against sample mix-up?
It might.
Would that assist in maintaining the integrity of evidence in terms of chain of custody?
Well, I think at some point, it would seem reasonable that if these swatches are going to be sent out, that there should be a count at some point.
Now, you were asked a series of questions about the handrail and the front gate, correct?
Yes.
Contrasting it to the substrate on the back gate.
Yes.
And you've never been to Bundy, have you?
I've never been to the crime scene.
Now
No.
let's look at this. I guess we'll start with the handrail. You look at those.
And Mr. Scheck, which photograph is this?
I'm using P291 and P292.
All right. Thank you.
Now, comparing the state of the paint on that handrail to the back gate, would it be a fair statement that the paint on that handrail shows less evidence of flaking and rusting than the back gate?
Sustained.
Well,
Foundation.
Have you looked at a picture of the back gate?
Yes, I have seen a picture of the back gate.
And in the picture of the back gate, do you not see that the lower rung of the back gate, there is some flaking of the paint?
I recall seeing something like that on that, but again, I'd like to see that photo again
We'll
if
show
that's
it
an
in a
issue.
second. And would you not agree that flaking of paint would be an indication of exposure to moisture?
Sustained. Foundation.
Would moisture be a factor in enhancing bacterial degradation?
Yes,
A significant factor.
yes,
In other words, from the microenvironment, as you characterized it, if bacterial agents got on a substrate, exposure to moisture would hasten or accelerate the bacterial degradation.
Yes.
You have the front gate picture there, by chance?
No, these are just the rear gate, I believe.
No, the other one. While we're waiting for the other one, why don't I show you, look again at these back gate pictures. Incidentally, the typing on the front gate did not give genotypes consistent with Mr. Simpson.
I'd have to check what those results were. That's some of the very recent work that we did.
Now, oh gosh, we focus first on this photo, which is Eagle 78. Can you get it any brighter than that? Can you go tighter than that?
You want tighter or brighter? Or both?
I guess what distresses me a little bit is that it appears to me much clearer on the monitor than it does here. Can we brighten that up at all?
Describe it, you get the light. There we go.
Now let's look at the microenvironment of the back gate. Does it appear to you that there are a number of berries and other foliage material across the steps leading up to the back gate?
Just from this view, it appears that there is that sort of material.
And on the substrate at the top of those stairwells, you see more what appear to be berries and foliage?
Well, now, I thought we were talking about the rear gate as opposed to you're talking about the substrate now being the top step there?
Yeah, I'm talking, let's just focusing your attention from the top step going back towards the rear gate. You see more foliage and, do you recall it from the other photograph being berry material in that area?
I can't really see the berries, but I think that looks like foliage.
And the substrate where sample number 50 was collected, you know from photographs, is just in front of that rear gate.
Yes, I believe that's correct, although I don't know the exact dimensions on these.
And number 50, which is collected on that substrate right near the rear gate,
Objection to the characterization right here, Your Honor.
Sustained.
all right, 50, which is collected in the area of the rear gate, without going back and getting the exact number of feet, that blood stain you found to be severely degraded.
Yes, that's what that indicated.
And you don't know how long 115, 116, and 117 were in plastic bags on July 3rd.
I don't have that information.
You have no idea how hot it was.
No, I don't.
You have no idea how long Mr. Fung kept those around before he took them to the evidence processing room and went through whatever procedures he did to dry them.
Yes, I don't have that information.
Now, looking at 294, before we do that, let's just take a look at Peoples 97. Front gate, picture taken on June 13th.
I don't believe so. Is that the front gate? 116?
Yes.
I'm sorry. All right.
Now, you understand, do you not, Mr. Sims, that given the numbering system of LAPD, this is photo ID number 116, but item number 51. You have that in mind?
Yes, that's my understanding, is that 116 in the photograph goes with a photo number, but not with a booked item number.
So this is item number 51, the front gate sample collected on June 13th. That's your understanding?
I believe that's correct, but I can check something on that.
Now, does it appear to you that the gate here is peeling?
Objection, no foundation.
In this photograph, I don't see any evidence of that.
All right. Now, this gate, you indicated before, opens up into an area where there's some foliage, correct?
Yes, it looked like there was actually some foliage that sort of hangs over it when it's opened.
Let me show you what is P equals 294. And let's see if we can get as tight there as we can to the gate itself. Oh, let's just stop there for a second. Now will you agree that it appears as though we have berries and leaves and soil material on the substrate leading up to the gate?
Yes, in general, I can see what you're talking about. I can't see those as berries unless somebody told me those are berries, but that looks like leaves and soil and that sort of thing, yes.
And over time, would you not expect in mornings that there might be moisture or dew? Over, let's say, a 3 or 4 week period, 3-week period?
Well, certainly there may be some dew formation, but
Speculation, no foundation.
Sustained.
Well, I've had a lesson on weather conditions in June and July in Los Angeles, in Brentwood.
Your Honor,
Oral. Have a seat.
that's a question?
I think it was in response to the court's comment about witnesses from out of town making assumptions about weather conditions in.
No, I understand that. Your
All right,
Honor.
Mr.
Let's
Chair,
let's just move
finish
on.
this.
Move on, Mr. Sims. Over a 3-week period, would not exposure to moisture and the biological material that you just see in the substrate, in terms of wind blowing it against the gate, would that not be a factor in terms of assessing bacterial degradation of any blood stain on that gate?
Objection assumes facts not in evidence, no foundation.
Oral.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what was being blown on the gate.
Well, would it be, I'm asking you to assume that over a 3-week period, wind will blow materials such as you see on the substrate in this photograph onto the gate area.
Okay.
That's part of, when you were answering Mr. Harmon's questions with respect to microenvironments, you were making assumptions. It was part of your reasoning, was it not, that some of these bacterial agents from the foliage would become airborne and deposit themselves on the substrate.
Well, for example, from droppings and that sort of thing, yes.
Okay. And that would apply to this rear gate as well as it would apply to the front gate.
Well, if there's material that drops down onto it, that would be true.
Well, can we go a little tighter to the... I show you 156. Now, do you see how the door from the rear gate opens onto an area where there's foliage?
Yes, I think I noted that earlier.
And you see some what appears to be leaf-like material just near the gate, don't you?
Do you mean we're now touching the
They're
gate?
larger chunks at the gate itself.
Yes, that looks to me like ice plant.
And you even see part of the plant sticking up through and touching the gate on the where it hinges, the right-hand side. You see that?
Yes.
All right. You haven't actually been to the scene to inspect these microenvironments, have you?
I have not.
You did some examination of fibers from the Bronco, did you not?
Sustained.
Did you see any evidence of berry-like material in the fibers from the Bronco you
On the
examined?
scope, Your Honor.
Sustained.
But no further questions.
Just a couple of questions, Mr. Sims. This rear gate microenvironment with the berries and the dog chew and everything back there, and this hypothetical about wind blowing stuff up on the gate, it's introductory,
Mistakes
Your
of
Honor.
fact and-
Sustained. Ask the question, Counsel.
You know anything about wind blowing berries up on the rear gate?
No.
Think the wind could blow a berry up on 117? You've seen that
It
picture.
would have to be a very strong wind, I would think.
Okay, Mr. Sims, the bottom line, is there anything about what you saw in 115, 116, 117, even in Mr. Scheck's microenvironment, that undermines the fact that they could have been there from June 13th?
No.
And let's talk about how long those stains may have been in plastic bags in a truck on July 3rd when Mr. Fung collected them. Do you remember the question?
Yes.
Okay. Is what's important whether or not you see bacterial contamination causing degradation?
Yes, it's sort of the bottom line is what do you see when you actually look at the yield gels on these particular samples and whether or not the phenomenon has occurred
And you
is
didn't-
indicated by the yield gel.
And you didn't see the same kind of contamination or degradation in 115, 116, and 117 as you did in the ones from the walkway,
That's correct.
even if they had been in the truck as long as they had been on June 13th? Is what's important the fact that you don't see the degradation?
Sustained.
I don't have any other questions.
All right.
Bottom line is the facts, Mr. Sims, about how much bacterial degradation you saw on 115, 116, and 117. You didn't see it.
I did not see that same pattern that I saw in the other samples from Bundy.
And number 50 collected from the substrate in the area of that gate, you saw it.
I believe that was one of those that showed up on the yield gel, yes.
And the substrate of the front gate, you saw bacterial degradation of those stains, item number 51 that was collected on June 13th.
Yes, I saw that pattern on the yield gel.
And from the handrail, that substrate, you saw bacterial degradation
I
on the
saw-
samples collected on June 13th.
I saw that same pattern, yes.
But from the samples that were collected on July 3rd, from that back gate, 117, 116, 115, you didn't see that bacterial degradation, did you?
That's correct.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sims, I think we're finished.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as far as the court session this morning is concerned, we're going to take our recess at this time. We're going to shift to a different focus of the evidence, I'm told by the attorneys shortly, and the parties who were involved in that presentation are not available until tomorrow morning. So we're going to stand in recess as far as the jury is concerned until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Please remember all of my admonitions to you. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't conduct any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you, nor are you to allow anyone to communicate with you with regard to the case. I see jurors mouthing the words with me. Thank you. All right. Just as long as you remember them all. All right. You all have a pleasant evening. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. All right. We'll stand in recess. All right, Mr. Sims. Thank you very much, sir. All right, back on the record in the Simpson matter. Mr. Simpson is again present before the court with his counsel, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Douglas, Mr. Kardashian, Mr. Bailey. People represented by Mrs. Clark, Mr. Darden, Mr. Kelbert, Mr. Lynch. Jury is not present. Counsel, is there anything we need to take up as to our change in focus here?
I think there are a few matters I've discussed with Mr. Shapiro.
Excuse me just a second. Mrs. Robertson? All right, good morning, Mr. Kelbert.
Initially, Your Honor, Mr. Lynch on my behalf filed 2 letters with the court and copies to the defense counsel asking for a clarification with respect to the court's order on photo G50, asking for reconsideration with respect to crime scene photos 39 and 40, which was, I believe, still under consideration by the court as I understood the court's order.
Well, as to 39 and 40, there was no clear explanation, either in argument or in your letter in support, indicating to me why that was relevant.
I think perhaps the court may have mistaken or forgotten a comment that he made in the original letter, which is the letter dated April 14th. And I don't know if the court has a copy of that available, but I can read to the court, if the court wishes, what we said about these photos. We submitted at the time 5 crime scene photos.
Correct.
Let me make it clear initially, we never offered 39 and 40 to show injuries to Nicole Brown Simpson on any part of her body. On page 3 of the letter, it reads, in addition to depicting the position of Nicole Brown Simpson's body at the time it was discovered, these photographs establish the degree of bleeding found on the step immediately above the body, the pool of blood surrounding the body, and the presence or absence of blood on portions of Nicole Brown Simpson's hands. That last phrase, Your Honor, is what is the purpose behind 39 and 40. We go on to say, these photographs are relevant to establish the sequence of wounds, and in particular that the major incised wound to the neck was the last sharp force injury inflicted. The court will recall from our oral argument, I believe the testimony will be from Dr. Lakshmanan, that in his incisive stab wound is in fact the last wound that was inflicted sharp force injury, and that she was incapacitated at the time, and that her hands were in contact with the pavement at the time the blood started to flow from that, and the basis for that is observing an absence of blood around the knuckles on both hands. Which are seen in the crime scene photos as in contact with the surface of the walkway where her body was found. And so this is a portion of the evidence that allows one to...
Explain that to me one more time.
Certainly. The basic thrust of the...
I fixed it. What happened was when I left, my foot got caught on this right here and ripped it out. And when I put it in, I must have only put the headphones in right. Almost the whole way. It was like it's out, just like a tiny hair. But you should be hearing me perfectly fine right now. So I'll tell you why I was so excited. You can't hear me right now. Right now you can't hear me? Right now. Can you hear me right now? Because my bar is going up and down on my mic. So it's telling me that I'm speaking loud. Fine.
The position from Dr. Lakshmanan with respect to this being the last sharp force injury inflicted, that is this major stab inside wound, is number one, there is an absence of cuts around the margins of the wound, which one would expect if the victim were in a condition to struggle, as one would expect a victim would, if able, from such an injury being inflicted. Number two, from the angulation of the wound, going left to right and in an upward direction.
Well, I understand all that, but explain to me how that's relevant to the hands.
And that her body, in pulling the head back to hyperextend the neck and create this exposure for the wound, the hands, at least as the time the blood started to flow from that wound, those hands were in contact in the area where they are seen in the crime scene photos at that point in time, because the blood pools around those hands, and the knuckles that appear to be in contact with the surface show an absence of blood. So it is the absence of blood on those knuckles that are in contact with the surface, which suggests that in fact she was down. Certainly at the time the blood started to flow, and from this wound the blood will flow very forcefully and very immediately. So that's the purpose behind it, to set up again that last wound was inflicted to show premeditation and deliberation by pulling the head back, exposing the neck. She's incapacitated, she's basically on the ground, and her hands are in contact, as verified by 39 and 40, showing the absence of blood around the knuckle areas. And as the hand is seen, or hands are seen, in the position in which the body is found, as reflected in those crime scene photos we submitted. So that was the argument. It was never an issue of these hand photographs would demonstrate wounds of any type. It was purely on the basis of the absence of blood around the knuckles in contact with the surface. That was the basis to...
Oh, please say you can hear me. Please, because we finally are talking about the hand was on the ground when he lifted up her head and cut her. Please say you can hear me. That's the first time we've actually heard anything about any murder in this murder trial. And we hear about, that's horrible. Like, she didn't even, like, her hands weren't even up here trying to stop or fight or do anything, because the blood pulled her, like, he pulled her head back while she was laying on the ground. That is crazy. We finally get the C team in, and they give us information that we've been waiting months and months and months and months and months to hear. I wonder if he's going to talk about Ron too. So all we care about in this murder trial is how they died and who did it. How did they die and who did it to them?
But these photos, because they are a part of the basis for Dr. Lakshmanan's opinion regarding the manner in which that last major stab incised wound was inflicted.
All right. The other two.
I'm sorry?
You submitted 2 other photographs.
Well, can I go to a clarification on G50?
Certainly.
In the court's order, the court ordered us to crop out the neck injury.
Correct.
But in fact, there are 3 neck injuries, sharp force injuries to the neck in that photograph. There is the major stab wound, complex stab wound, that is most evident. There is a portion of one of the superficial incised wounds to the neck.
Right. Do you have G50 there? I don't have that in front of me.
We weren't sure if the court kept this copy of G50 or...
No. I surrendered everything back to you.
All right.
The court does not have an independent copy of these items.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you, Jude. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, no, Chinny. You know, that would make sense if we fired him because he's the only one who has told us anything of use in this entire trial. So we absolutely need to get him out of here. Get him out of here. We might get used to getting relevant information and then we'll get spoiled.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kellberg. Mr. Shapiro.
Can I just finish my remark on G50?
Yes, you may.
It is actually the 3rd sharp force injury, which is the reason we would like the court to clarify its order. It is that 5/8 inch stab wound. It is seen in another photograph, but its posterior end, which is of significance in establishing the type of weapon which inflicted it, and a basis to measure that posterior end is provided in this photograph and in no other photograph.
All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Kellberg, we're speaking of the major wound here?
No, we are speaking of the 5/8 inch stab wound, which is, as you view the photograph, to the right of what I think the court concludes is the major stab wound in that photograph to the neck. It's oval in shape. It might appear on the first blush look. If the court I don't think the court does have, but I can provide it. I believe it's G40, which shows that wound as well.
All right, let me see G40.
Don't get excited, Chinny. He's going to lose it again. We know it. We know it.
I think it can be noted quite clearly that the picture is not nearly as crisp of that particular sharp force injury as it is in 50. I don't know if you can crop. That's the problem. But what I will say to the court is, if the court says crop that out, I expect that the court will allow Dr. Lakshmanan to testify that he has reviewed all of the autopsy photographs and that he made a measurement off of one of the photographs, which is not one of the photographs that the jury has seen.
That's what we're going to see.
It is the basis, and it is.
That's it, Chinny. This guy right here, right there, this guy must be the medical examiner. What do you think? I think that's where we're going. I think that's it. Because it would make sense that the prosecution ends their spiel on the murder, maybe, right? Right? It was all strategy to bore everybody into, a stupor and then bring up the medical examiner?
Is not, I think, excludable as a basis for an expert opinion, even though the court has ruled under 352 that it should be cropped out, because it is not the type of evidence such as an unconstitutionally obtained confession on which experts cannot rely. They can rely on what would otherwise be inadmissible hearsay or other inadmissible matters. This photograph, the court initially has concluded as to that portion simply is redundant. We suggest it is not redundant with respect to that one particular sharp force injury.
All right.
On the 3rd photograph, and I have shown it previously to Mr. Shapiro, I think he would agree that we let him know about 33. And that is a photograph that depicts a portion of cerebral cortex tissue from the brain of Nicole Brown Simpson. I think we have made it clear, probably in our initial papers and the autopsy reports, that Dr. Golden, in the original protocol and in the form that is provided to reflect brain injuries, indicated there were no injuries to the brain observed. I believe it's on June 22nd, if memory serves me correctly, that Dr. Lakshmanan and the defense expert, Dr. Bodden, who I believe was seated in court and may still be, he's right, just to my left, reviewed independently from Dr. Golden the tissue that had been preserved from autopsy. Dr. Lakshmanan observed, and I'm sure Dr. Bodden did as well, that there appears to be a contusion, or at least a evidence of blood in the tissue of the brain that was preserved by Dr. Golden. This ultimately resulted in an addendum which included reference to that particular material, along with a supplemental microscopic report detailing the findings of that. Clearly, it's something that is a mistake by Dr. Golden not to have addressed or diagrammed, and it is a matter which Dr. Lakshmanan would talk about in discussing its possible relationship with the contusion to the scalp of Nicole Brown Simpson that is in one of the photographs we're going to show. I believe it's 40, if I'm not mistaken. 40 of Nicole Brown Simpson. I may be mistaken on the number, but we can get it if the court needs to see it. The issue is, was that brain contusion directly underneath the scalp contusion, as Dr. Golden's supplemental report suggests is his recollection, or is it B20, I'm sorry, B20 is our number, or is it from the opposite side of the brain, in which case it may reflect a type of injury that's called a contracoup, C-O-N-T-R-E-C-O-U-P type injury, whereas if the brain contusion were directly underneath the scalp contusion, it would suggest a coup, C-O-U-P type injury, and Dr. Lakshmanan can explain these things much better than I as to their significance in this matter. But it's clearly something that was not addressed, and it's something that is verifiable by the photograph. I don't think this is a particularly prejudicial photograph in any way. I doubt most people would have the foggiest idea what they would be looking at. It's certainly not gruesome in any sense of the term, and its probative value, I think, is significantly advanced by its relationship to the scalp contusion, which relates to the nature and extent of any struggle between Nicole Brown Simpson and the perpetrator of her murder. So those were the three photos. The other thing I wanted to do to make sure there's a record in the event that there's a conviction and an appeal is to have preserved as a court exhibit, if we could, the full set of photographs that we submitted with the designation that we were not going to be using these photographs, because the court reviewed both the photographs we submitted that we wanted to use from the coroner photos, as well as the other available coroner photos which we had no intention of using. And it seems to me that any reviewing court that wants to evaluate the court's exercise of 352 discretion would be helped by seeing all of the photographs that were available. Clearly the ones that are being used are going to be seen as exhibits. Those which were offered and excluded by the court, we also have available to have marked as part of the court exhibit, and then the balance as well. So we have them here, and we would like to have them marked for the purposes of that hearing in any designation the court wishes, either as a court exhibit or a people's exhibit, whatever the court desires.
I think we'll just call I've listed in the court's order by indicating the designation that the people have given to at crime scene, Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman. So we'll make the package of autopsy and crime scene photographs for this purpose, Court's Exhibit 13, with the sub-designations as indicated by the people.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, I think that's a good suggestion.
And that is what I wanted to bring to the court's attention with respect to the photographs, so perhaps if the court wants to hear from defense counsel, and then I would ask to be heard on several other matters.
Several?
Brief. And it may be a question of timing rather than having them resolved at this point. Do you want me to indicate what they are?
Out of sheer curiosity, sure.
Well, one is still the unresolved issue of other alleged incidents of mistakes by Dr. Golden. As the court will recall from our oral argument, there were two incidents in addition to the two that we conceded were mistakes by Dr. Golden, which were raised in a television program on ABC, Primetime Live. We have advised Mr. Shapiro that our position is no mistakes were made in those two cases, and we obviously abide by the court's ruling as to the admissibility of mistake evidence. We're not trying to relitigate the two cases that the court ruled were admissible, but because we do not believe mistakes were made in these additional cases, that we would have to litigate the merits of those two cases to evaluate whether a mistake has been made, and we would raise a 352 objection to that. There is one additional case that came to my attention through Dr. Lakshmanan, I believe on the 24th of May. Counsel has been advised with a letter of mine dated May 25th to Dr. Lakshmanan, or a memo to file, I can't remember which one off the top of my head. But basically it involves a gentleman who was autopsied by Dr. Golden, and in the course of the autopsy, Dr. Golden made note that the gentleman had a thyroid gland. It appears to be the case that the gentleman had had his thyroid gland removed many years earlier. So this would appear to be a clear mistake by Dr. Golden. Again, this is a case, it's not a sharp force injury, gunshot wound case whatsoever. In fact, I believe Dr. Lakshmanan would testify that there's no significance to what the issues were in that particular autopsy on whether or not the man had a thyroid gland. But it is a mistake. We bring it to the court's attention. We brought it to defense counsel's attention. My position would be on that one that it's so unrelated to what the issues are here and basically cumulative to what will be a plethora of evidence concerning mistakes, not only in this series of cases that are before the court, but also in these additional 2 cases that the court has allowed to be heard by the jury, that it would be simply cumulative, and especially on matters that are unrelated to these types of cases. So that's one of the matters that we wish to address. And I've been advised by Mr. Shapiro that he has objections to some or all of our charts, I believe primarily the time of death charts. And obviously we're willing to discuss that whenever the court wishes. Those
Right.
were the matters that I believe I wish to bring to the court's attention.
Mr. Kellberg, how much of the time of death chart issue, I mean, how much of that will be
We're not going to get
presented?
into it today. I can tell the court that quite clearly. As I understand, we're going to noon. We will not get remotely close to it, I don't believe.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kellberg. Good morning, Mr. Shapiro.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Your Honor, I believe the court has already made a ruling on the crime scene photographs. And you've heard our extensive arguments on all of those issues regarding crime scene photographs and autopsy photographs. We stand by those arguments, mainly that the autopsy photographs are so gruesome and so horrendous that their prejudicial effect outweighs any probative value. And hearing what was said this morning, I think they are irrelevant. If counsel is arguing that injuries that are not related to the cause of death are not relevant, and that mistakes made by Dr. Golden are not relevant, then we are willing to stipulate that the cause of death
It's a new
to Nicole
lawyer?
Simpson
Never seen
and
him before.
Ronald Goldman were as indicated by Dr. Lakshmanan. The people can form that stipulation, and we can move on if that's really what their intention is. But it seems clear that that is not their intention. Their intention is to demonstrate through these photographs something which they have no evidence of, and that is that the photographs can show premeditation and deliberation. And of all the experts we have consulted, there is not one in the world who can conclude from photographs of injuries the state of mind of the real killer in this case. So we would first ask the court that if the people...
Okay, that doesn't even make sense, sir. Of course you can see from a photograph the state of mind. I mean, if the photograph showed a light, casual 1/, okay, she got 1/. If a photograph can show multiple stab wounds, with one going through the skull enough to get brain matter, yeah, you can fairly certainly establish that the state of mind of the person killing her is extremely angry.
really are trying to only bring out the actual wounds that are the cause of death, that their examination be limited to that and that anything else be irrelevant. And regarding any photographs that are used for the purpose of showing premeditation and deliberation, we would ask the court to find that any probative value is so highly speculative at best and is nowhere found in the literature that they should be prohibited under 352. Regarding the charts that have been proffered, we have several comments if the court wishes us to address them now. I think it probably would be good to do that because in the event that some of these are not going to be allowed or have to be changed, it would give the people time over the weekend to do that. But I will follow the court's guidance.
Well, it would be my suggestion that we come back and confer at 1:30 this afternoon. Let's use the time for the presentation of the fundamentals to the jury we have the doctor here, we have the jury here. Let's use the morning session for a presentation to the jury. Mr. Kellberg, what exhibits are you going to use this morning with the...
It's just so sad that insecure men do crimes of passion. Just not thinking about the consequences of their actions and what may happen the next day. And women.
As I understand
And women.
charts that Mr. Shapiro is concerned about are time of death charts.
Well, no, actually, they go to, they begin with, there are comments on virtually every chart that has been proffered by the people, beginning with the wound characteristics and possible sources, which is another issue that we have to address before the jury hears any testimony. And that is, I've been informed that there are 4 knives none of which the people claim were the knives that were used, that they want to present to the doctor for examination, and we would object to any of those knives being shown as being irrelevant and being prejudicial, as they are going to attempt to try to link these in some way
I
to
agree.
Mr. Simpson, either through
I agree.
ownership of a stock interest in a company that makes knives, or the knives that may have been present at the murder scene. So we would object to those. And the first chart that comes up,
I
wound
agree,
characteristics and possible
unless she has like a block of knives in a knife block and one is missing, and any of the other ones, you know, the style of that knife could inflict that wound, and the one missing was a bigger size and the correct size then I agree. But no, you just can't bring in a bunch of knives because you can't find the real murder weapon.
sources is purely argumentative. In fact, I think the best argument I could make on any of these charts is to ask the court to reread Mr. Hank Goldberg's arguments to Your Honor regarding our charts, which the court sustained.
Thank you, counsel.
You're welcome.
Mr. Calvert?
I must say, Your Honor, in all of my argument on the photographs, I don't believe I ever used the word or words not relevant. I'm not relitigating the entire motion. Mr. Shapiro apparently wishes to relitigate the entire motion. We have offered to the court...
No, I take that as preserving his record and...
Okay. Then let's go to photos don't demonstrate the state of mind. I must say, in all the California Supreme Court decisions I've ever reviewed where they talk about the basis of admissibility of autopsy photos, and the most common basis is they reflect on premeditation and deliberation, malice, intent to kill, and that's what makes them admissible. Seems to me it's not a question of whether Dr. Bodden or some other expert thinks they can read the mind of the killer. The issue is, are these photographs helpful to a jury in assessing what was the state of mind of O.J. Simpson when he killed these two human beings? And that's the basis on which they were offered, and that's the basis on which I think the court allowed us to use the vast majority of them. With respect to the knives, unless there's somebody, and you know there's so many lawyers on our O.J. Simpson team, I don't know probably half of them, so I may not know what somebody else is doing, and they probably won't know what I'm doing.
That's a big problem, isn't it?
That is a big problem. But I'm down here for a limited role, and I hope to keep the role very limited, and I will be in and out of here, and the court maybe won't even notice me. The issue of knives is not to show that Mr. Simpson owned any of these knives, had stock in any of the companies that manufactured them. These knives are being used to show the jury class characteristics of knives. There has been a big issue raised, I think, by the defense as to, hey, the coroner, Dr. Golden, said at the preliminary hearing a second knife could be involved. And in fact, what he really says, and what the evidence will show, is that all of the wounds are consistent with a single-edged knife, but certain of the wounds have patterns of characteristics that make it impossible to distinguish whether it's due to a single-edged knife or a double-edged knife. So you cannot exclude the possibility of a second knife, but the evidence is also going to show that there's not one sharp force injury that cannot be attributed to a single-edged knife. These knives are to show the jury things like thickness of the blade, which has some bearing on the width of the wound on the surface of the body. These knives have different lengths, which may reflect on the depth of penetration of the wound into the body. These blades have different widths, which may reflect on the length of the wound on the surface of the body. And so when the issue is raised of how many knives could have inflicted these sharp force injuries, this jury has to understand class characteristics of knives and what doctors like Dr. Lakshmanan or Dr. Bodden look for in evaluating the class of knife which could be the source. I believe the testimony will show, Your Honor, quite clearly that unlike what maybe some people believe, and perhaps based upon what people believe with respect to connecting a specific gun to a specific bullet that's found in a body, it is a very rare situation where forensic pathologists are able to identify a specific knife that is not found in the body at the time that the body is found, or a single knife which at least didn't break off a part of the tip of the knife blade, so that when you get a possible suspect weapon that just happens to be missing a tip, experts can evaluate whether the missing tip and the knife with the missing tip seem to correlate to one another. But it's a rare commodity to be able to show a specific knife. These knives are to give the jury an understanding of the differences that appear in knives, both single-edged and double-edged, show the jury how the wound patterns can either be different or appear similar, depending on what kind of knife is involved, and to see how you try and evaluate things like width of the wound, length of the wound, and depth of the wound to the class characteristics of knives involving thickness of the blade width of the blade, length of the blade. And that's what these four are offered for. No other reason and no suggestion whatsoever would be made by me, and I believe by anybody else on our team, to the jury that Mr. Simpson is responsible, because the evidence may well show that not one of these knives fits all the class characteristics that Dr. Lakshmanan may believe are necessary for a single-edged knife to have created all of these wounds. That's the rationale behind it. One other thought came to mind that I failed to mention to the court with respect to the photos. Some of these photos have been cropped at what I would call unusual angles. I think it would be very important that the jury know we haven't played fast and loose with the photographs. Dr. Lakshmanan obviously doesn't review photographs that are cropped in that fashion. I would ask the court to inform the jury that the photographs that may appear to be cropped have been cropped under order of the court, and the jury is to draw no speculation from the fact that a photograph is cropped.
All right. Thank you. Yes, you may.
Your Honor, I think first that we would point out that we believe it is highly improper for any lawyer to suggest to Your Honor in argument that the motivation behind O.J. Simpson killing these people is shown in these photographs. That's an opinion of counsel. That's what the jury is here to decide. It's improper, and we believe it has no place by any professional in addressing the court. And we would ask the court to properly instruct counsel to refrain from such inflammatory comments. Regarding the knives, Dr. Lakshmanan filed a report, and I can get the report for you, which indicates that in his evaluation of the four knives, they are inconsistent with all of the wounds on both of the people. So these knives are totally irrelevant. All it does is, again, inflame the passions of the jury by bringing out large weapons to demonstrate what is obvious. Knives come in different shapes and forms. And if this jury doesn't understand that, then I think they're going to have a much more difficult time understanding some of the scientific concepts that we've had. That's just basic common knowledge, that knives are in different shapes, different strengths, different degrees of sharpness, and picking four knives at random does nothing. In this case, especially when Dr. Lakshmanan has eliminated those knives that were presented to see if they could be the knives that resulted in these injuries. Therefore, they are irrelevant and should not be introduced whatsoever.
All right. Thank you, counsel.
Can I just briefly respond?
I think we've heard enough on both sides.
I think Mr. Shapiro made a misstatement. I'm not going to respond to his comments to me personally. I don't take them personally, and I understand why he makes the remarks that he makes. But these are not the same four knives. We, in fact, withdrew the knife, which is a knife of a similar nature to a knife which, at the preliminary hearing, there was evidence that Mr. Simpson had purchased from a knife store. We took that knife out because we didn't want anyone to suggest that we were trying to use that knife in a subliminal fashion to suggest that that knife was the murder weapon. These knives, first of all, to clarify the record, Dr. Lakshmanan did find two of the knives to be consistent with the kind of knife which could cause all of the wounds, because one must take into account the elasticity of the skin. And since we had no human volunteers for the necessary stabbing experiments, hog skin was used, and it is on the basis of that factor along with others. The hogs, I don't believe, volunteered either, but they had little choice apparently in the matter. That the experiments that were done indicated that two of the knives were consistent. But the four knives we have here are not the four knives that were used in the experiment. These are just to show class characteristics, and I would suggest to the court that a juror does not have such a complete understanding of class characteristics of knives and characteristics of sharp force injuries to the body that these knives are irrelevant. In fact, they're very relevant to give the jury an understanding of the connection between those class characteristics and the shapes of wounds on the body. I'll submit the matter.
Thank you, counsel. All right, as to the photographs C40 and C39, now that the explanation or the argument regarding the relevance has been made clear to the court, the lack of blood on certain portions of the hands of this victim are relevant to the manner in which death was, the manner in which the body was at the time the fatal wound or the large fatal wound was inflicted. And I'll overrule an objection as to that, although it is not a pleasant photograph. As to the court's direction, the cropping of G50, I'll direct the cropping to take place to eliminate the large neck wound, but the others are to remain.
So the others may remain?
May remain. And as to B33, the photograph of brain tissue, it does have significant probative value. It is a photograph that does not have any inflammatory impact and has to be explained what it is, so I'll overrule the objection. Since I think the probative value, what I can see here, what appears to be obvious discoloration of one part of the tissue, assuming that expert testimony will indicate that that is indicia of injury rather than natural condition, I'll allow the photograph. As to the 4 knives on the representation of counsel, that these are to demonstrate class characteristics only. As to the type of knife, I'll overrule the objection at this time, but I'd like to see them first before they're presented to the jury. All right. Certainly.
We would, without changing our position since certain photographs now are going to be asked that photograph G35 based on the fact that it relates to types of knife wounds.
All right.
It's a hand wound on Mr. Logan, which is unenforceable.
We have no objection, Your Honor.
All right. All right, and counsel, one other matter. The court reporters are not available to me this afternoon at 1:30, so what we'll do is take the time to sit down and look at these informally and then put any findings on the record at 8:30 Monday.
The only problem I think we have, Your Honor, we would probably get in quite early in our examination of Dr. Lakshmanan the sharp force injury wound charts to show these characteristics. I don't know when the court takes a break, but basically we have Dr. Lakshmanan's curriculum vitae. We have some photographs that will show how the bodies were handled in the course of their arrival at the coroner's office through the course of the time when they were autopsied and subsequently released. I don't know that that's going to take much more than maybe a half an hour or so, at which time I would anticipate getting into a discussion in general terms of sharp force injuries.
All right, well, let's see the diagram then.
I think the court has.
Yes.
May I approach?
Which item? I have length of blade, wound characteristics.
Perhaps Mr. Shapiro and I could approach and just, so I can find out which.
Let me, Your Honor, to make it easier, it would take probably about 5 minutes for me to go through our objections
All right.
with court and counsel.
You want me to pull out the?
Oh, I have the photocopies here in front of me.
Okay.
Regarding, let's just refer to them as page 1. Page 1, there is no objection.
That's the correlation between knife wound and dimensions.
Correct.
All right.
Page 2, wound characteristics and possible sources. We would suggest that this is all argumentative, especially number 2, although from a single-edged knife blade, the wound appears to be from a double-edged knife blade because of the thickness of the blade. At depth of penetration is very narrow. That clearly is an argumentative statement, as are other matters on that. Regarding chart 3, the correlation between wound dimensions, we would submit that. Regarding the terminology describing injuries, we have no objection. Regarding the anatomical terms, we have no objection except that they are grammatically incorrect. Anterior, as they define towards the front of the body, is really anteriorly, as are all the other words. It is a grammatical error. If the court wishes to have the people correct it, we would suggest that would be proper. On factors commonly used to estimate the range for time of death under livor mortis, we would respectfully suggest that definition is incorrect, that their definition, the draining of blood, is incorrect. Draining medically implies that it goes from the front to the back, and blood does not go from the front to the back. Rather, livor mortis is the settling of blood. And so we would object that that is blatantly an incorrect statement. On alga mortis, regarding temperature, we believe that under B2, where they say that B2, 3B2, the next chart, do you have that? That normal temperature may vary from 93.6 degrees Fahrenheit. There is nothing in the literature that says that normal temperature is 93.6 degrees. That is incorrect. The next chart, the relationship between post-mortem interval and body cooling would need much further foundation before that can be admitted.
I agree there's a foundational necessity for all of these.
Well, those in particular. The next one, the limitations, again, they point out that on this diagram, they use the temperature of 93.6. as being within the normal range of body temperatures for human beings. We would submit that as medically incorrect. On alga mortis, on the next page, D1, when they talk about a temperature plateau, means the actual core temperature at the time of death may remain at that constant value for some variable length of time due to the body's production of heat from the residual metabolic process of dying tissue and the metabolic activity of intestinal bacteria. That's argumentative, it's scientifically untrue, and there is no scientific evidence for that. On the next chart of alga mortis continued, on 4C, subparagraph II, the loss of body temperature due to postmortem cooling from the actual core temperature at the time of death, in which case one cannot determine with certainty how long the body temperature remained on the plateau or how much temperature loss has occurred from the actual core temperature at the time of death, since one cannot know what that temperature was, is argumentative. One may be able to know that, depending on how quickly the temperature was taken. Continuing on the next page, D, sub I, 1 and 2, again, those are both argumentative with the same arguments I've just given you. An example is that normally body temperature would not increase after time of death. However, it could increase if the body was perhaps found in the desert, where the ambient temperature exceeded 110 degrees. The next statement on alga mortis, whether there is a plateau stage, and they list 10 things, are number one, the majority of those that are listed are irrelevant to this case and do not relate to any factors in this case, and are also argumentative. And then finally, the conclusion is hearsay, is argumentative, and it takes one section, one sentence out of a lengthy treatise that is only argumentative and, based on prior court rulings, may not even be admissible. Under rigor mortis, the survey of the literature concerning the period before rigor mortis is detectable, listing several different time periods, but without giving references, are self-serving and are not documented. Well, we have the references at the end, but they don't show any direction as to where those references are. I was just pointed out that there is at the end of this, the references of text that were used to come to these things, but just to pull sections out of textbooks and put up the sections that they believe advance their cause is not proper procedure and is argumentative and is admitting hearsay evidence that the court on numerous occasions has prohibited the defense from doing when we attempted to bring out sections of known text. Same thing for rigor mortis, paragraph 4, the times between the persistence and disappearance of rigor mortis is all argumentative, and the conclusion, again, is one sentence taken out of context that is purely conclusionary. On liver mortis, again, when they start out, I don't know where they got this from, but regarding the draining of blood into the vessels, that is not correct. It should be settling. It's just scientifically wrong. We could say the same for chart 2. However, we have no objection to that chart.
Chart 2?
Chart 2 on liver mortis, the time of onset.
Okay. You have no objection to that?
We have no objection to that.
All right.
The conclusions on liver mortis, we have no objection to. The conclusions by Dr. Knight, we do object to the conclusions by Dr. Klaus Hensige, since that text was written after this case. It could not possibly have been relied upon at the time of the autopsy.
You mean one with no air condition?
The vitreous humorous potassium level that refers to simply the eye fluids, we have no objection to.
Gross.
and in the conclusions of gastric stomach contents, we would have no objection to that.
Mr. Calvert.
I almost don't know where to begin, but I have a few ideas. Perhaps if I could start with the time of death and work backwards initially. I seem to recall, and I confess I have not been following this case with the earnest of the American populace and perhaps people all over the world, but I have heard cross-examination by Mr. Cochran of, I think it was Detective Lang, asking if he read certain things. Did he agree with certain things? And of course the court is well...
Sir, you are a lawyer in the O.J. Simpson case, and you are standing in front of the judge right now, and you knew you were going to be. No one just called you up 10 minutes ago and said, hey, can you come in and be a lawyer for a few minutes on this great, big, gigantic case? What do you mean you haven't been following the case? What in the world are you thinking? How unfreaking believable. I got stuff done, but I did not get it finished, G. I did get some done. Working on it.
Well aware under 801B, experts are allowed to rely on what is otherwise inadmissible hearsay. None of this is going to be offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but I can indicate to the court quite clearly that Dr. Lakshmanan has read this material, has relied upon this material, and has formed opinions based upon this material, because what the evidence will show is if Dr. Lakshmanan had been at the body at 12:13 when Officer Risky found the bodies and applied all of the knowledge that forensic pathologists have to assess an estimated range for time of death, he would not be able to differentiate between 10:15 and 11 o'clock, which is the window frame that everybody seems to be talking about in this case, because it is not a precise science. Now, Mr. Shapiro said there's no literature on these things. Well, there is a book that has come out by some of the most preeminent researchers on time of death. I'm sure Dr. Bodden has a copy of it. I'm sure he's read it. And if he hasn't, I'll bet he'll read it before he comes in to testify. The estimation of the time since death in the early post-mortem period. People like Henziga with his nomogram, and Knight, one of the preeminent forensic pathologists from England, who has a textbook, Knight on Forensic Pathology, and is also the editor of Simpson, another English forensic pathology text. These are big names in the field, Your Honor. These are not lightweights. So, for example, when Mr. Shapiro says there's nothing in the literature regarding the range for core body temperature of normal people, healthy people, page 10 of this book, under Mr. Noakes's chapter on body temperature at the time of death, very beginning. It is very difficult to specify a, quote, normal, unquote, body temperature, as this value can vary considerably between individuals. Rectal temperatures in a group of healthy subjects can vary between 34.2 and 37.6 degrees Celsius, with a mean of 36.9 degrees Celsius. We have computed both the Fahrenheit and the Celsius measures on the chart. That's exactly where this is from. That's the basis on which Dr. Lakshmanan relies. And if Mr. Shapiro says there's nothing in the literature, then all I can assume is Mr. Shapiro hasn't read this book. I've read it. It's not light reading. And there's a lot of it I don't understand. But it's not tough to understand that paragraph and much of the information in here. And in fact, Dr. Knight in the introduction makes it clear that some of the sections are intended for people who are not going to be mathematically oriented and have to delve through the double exponential formulas and various higher levels of mathematical computation involved. But the other parts of the book are for forensic pathologists who practice, lawyers, police officers, in helping them to understand how one goes about estimating range for time of death. Now, Mr. Shapiro also said there is nothing regarding how the body can maintain its core temperature at time of death based upon what our chart says. I refer the court to a book I referenced once earlier when I appeared on this case, Spitz and Fisher's Medical Legal Investigation of Death, 3rd edition, edited by Werner U. Spitz, who's a preeminent forensic pathologist in the United States, I believe retired from Detroit. On page 22 of the chapter dealing with time of death and changes after death, second paragraph, right-hand column. The initial plateau, which rarely lasts more than 3 to 4 hours, is generally explained on the basis of heat generated by the residual metabolic process of dying tissues and by the metabolic activity of intestinal bacteria. I think it's pretty obvious, Your Honor. I couldn't have made this up. We had to have something in the literature to support this, and this is one of the well-recognized forensic texts. Now, I'll also indicate to the court, there is no Dr. Bodden on forensic pathology. Dr. Bodden may be well known, but Dr. Bodden is not the editor or the contributor in recent years to any recognized preeminent forensic pathology text. And I'm assuming he's reviewed this material. And he may want to come in and say they don't know what they're talking about. And then we can cross-examine Dr. Bottom to see if he knows what he's talking about. See what experiments he's done, what research he's done, what views he has that are supported by the literature. But all of these charts are based upon findings from the literature, read by, relied upon, considered by Dr. Lakshmanan in forming opinions. There is nothing argumentative at all about what these charts lay out. And I must say I was somewhat dumbstruck by Mr. Shapiro's indication that you can't use Henziga's book because it came out after June 12, 1994. That one can't use that book to tell this jury that all the hoopla about lost stomach contents, which isn't even mentioned
Calm
in
down,
Henziga's
sir.
book as a
Calm
factor
down.
to be used for evaluating time of death, that in fact tell this jury that you cannot be precise and that you talk in terms of ranges which, based upon the forensic pathology information, makes it a range of perhaps 9 p.m. to 12 midnight to cover the range for time of death of these two human beings. And that's what this chart is intended to show. It is a complex process that is not precise. And we are trying to give the jury a true understanding of the limitations and the probative purposes of the process. Now, again, Mr. Shapiro talked about lividity. He doesn't like the word draining. He likes the word settling. He didn't mention that the chart says draining into the dependent parts of the body. We never said, oh, it drains from the top to the bottom. It depends on the position of the body at time of death and if it's rotated over, as the evidence will show. So all of this is factual. All of this is based on the literature. All of this has been relied upon by Dr. Lakshmanan, and he will so indicate. And given, as I understand, the court's understanding of 801B 721, that is a basis on which he may testify to the materials he has relied upon in forming his opinion. And that's what these charts represent. Now, with respect to the Mr. Lynch points out that it is interesting, of course, that Mr. Shapiro objects to some but not all of the comments. I guess he likes some of the comments and doesn't like others. But the jury should take all of the comments together because it is a gestalt process of looking through a lot of different factors, starting with temperature and getting to Riger and Liver and the vitreous humor, potassium level, and so forth. And I don't know if the jury's going to be bored or they're going to be excited by this information.
I don't know if the jury's going to be bored. We know. We're pretty damn certain we know by now whether the jury's going to be bored. We should do a stream one day with only emojis. We can only speak through emojis. That would be really difficult. How do I say Scott is a douche with emojis?
But one way or the other, I believe they have to have an understanding of this information to evaluate what is a contention by the defense that there were just horrendous mistakes made by the police in not calling the coroner out early. I mean, that's been, as I understand the limited portions of this trial I've heard or reviewed, a major contention. Oh, Lord, they didn't call him out until 6 o'clock, and then they didn't get out there till 8, and they didn't put the probes in until 10:40 and 10:50. Well, the evidence is going to show that if the probe had been stuck in the liver of Nicole Brown Simpson and the probe had been stuck in the liver of Ron Goldman at 12:13 a.m. on June 13th, you wouldn't be any better able to differentiate 10:15 from 11 o'clock than you would be when Ms. Radcliffe did the performance of the liver temperature readings at 10:40 and 10:50 in the morning.
Liver.
I'm sorry, you're right, Your Honor. I'm flipping to the, that's why the anterior and the anteriorly is my mistake. I was never good on adverbs and adjectives. I'm trying to think of some of the other objections. I think I've basically given the court the flavor of what this is all about. And if the court has any question about any entry in here as to where it comes from and so forth.
The only problem with talking all in emojis for me is I struggle to find the emoji that I want. I know what I want, but the box is only this big and I'm trying to find it. And when I scroll, it scrolls way too far and I can't find. When I'm talking with my children in our family chat, I'm constantly screaming to one of them, put this emoji in for me. Put it in. Someone find this emoji and put it in.
I'll be more than happy to get the literature out to show the court. But I can clearly indicate to the court that what this is intended to do, for example, the sharp force injury charts, is to show the jury how different weapons can create single-edged, double-edged, can create similar appearing wounds. And that's why when we hear from the actual wounds that were found on the bodies of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, that some of the wounds are consistent with either a single edge or a double edge, this jury will be able to
Like
see
right now, I
what
want
it
a
is
snake.
from the knife
I want a
that
snake.
leaves the characteristics that are looked at
Took me
from
an
the
hour to
wound
find that.
that Dr. Lakshmanan or other forensic pathologists
I guess
would
I could
use to
type it
form an
in.
opinion as to the class of weapon that may have inflicted the wound. I do not believe they are argumentative at all. They are factual, and that is what we have intended to do. I wasn't
Bam.
here for Mr. Goldberg's argument. I'm in the dark on Mr. Goldberg's argument. I like Mr. Goldberg. I have a lot of respect for Mr. Goldberg, but not even knowing his argument, I don't feel I should be saddled with his argument. I'm here to make the argument as I understand the law to be and ask the court to rule on its understanding of the law, irrespective of what Mr. Goldberg may or may not have said.
He's really triggering my 80s, 90s. When was Goldberg real popular in wrestling? Goldberg. Every time he says it, my brain goes into a Goldberg. What did he do? The spear or the lance or the... I think it was the spear, wasn't it? Goldberg. Big guy, wrestling. Where's Maiko?
On that basis, Your Honor, I'll submit the matter.
All right, thank you. Yes, you may.
Your Honor, regarding the issue as to when the coroner should come out and begin their process and their examination, it's not something that we have dreamt up. State law requires that the coroner immediately come to the crime scene, and those are things that we're going to bring out before the jury if the court allows us to bring out the legal sections involved. Regarding the position of the people in this case, it seems clear from the statements of counsel that these charts indeed are all argument. They're all positions that he would like to advance to the jury. And because they are argumentative, they are not properly used as visual aids to help an expert witness in communicating to the jury. Rather, it is an outline of their closing argument and may be proper at that time, but certainly based on all the prior court rulings are improper at this time. Thank you.
All right, as to the wound characteristics and possible source chart, which is page 2, the objection will be overruled. It is something that can be used by an expert witness to explain his or her testimony. I do not find it to be argumentative or improper. As to the factors commonly used to estimate range of time for death, the objection being the terminology draining of blood. However, the explanation given is by the action of gravity. I don't think that there is any misunderstanding that will be conveyed to the jury, since the common sense notion of draining is that something by operation of gravity goes from a higher level to a lower level. So I don't see a danger here of misleading the jury. I don't find this to be argumentative or misleading. As to the algor mortis chart, based upon the offer by Mr. Kelberg that there is substantiation in the literature regarding the range of core body temperature, the objection is overruled pending a foundation that in fact exists. Also, algor mortis, subsection C, subsection 2. I don't find that to be an inaccurate statement. The objection will be overruled. The objection as to algor mortis, number 4, conclusion. I'm going to ask you to strike the 4 and conclusion, since that is argument.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Are we to strike the content?
Strike the 4 and the word conclusion.
But leave the box?
You can leave the box.
All right.
That is a statement from the text.
Yes.
On number 5, rigor mortis, strike the conclusion. The box may remain, since that is a direct quote. All right. All right, we'll take 10 minutes to get the jury down from the lounge, and then we'll start with the jury. All right, we'll take 10.
All right, so if you guys weren't here at the beginning, or you were and I was muted, and the beginning was bumpy today, so I'm just going to real quick go over what happened. So yesterday, my cat pressed play while I was recording, and the O.J. Simpson videos played along with me recording another court. So yesterday's recording is garbage, can't use it. But the problem for us is we track where we are each day by the red bars on here. And if you look, the cat played it the whole way to June 7th. So we have to remember tomorrow that we are on June 2nd, Part 1. Just have to remember. Now, we shouldn't have to remember that we're at 1 hour and 1 minute in, because this should turn black. When I get out of here, it'll say that I'm only here. So it'll track which part of the video I was in. But tomorrow when we start, we have to remember that we're on June 2nd. Now, of course, I'm going to leave this just the way it is. And if the cats don't touch it, then it'll already be here and we're fine. But if the cats shut off my computer or press play or whatever they do. And I work every day for the next 4 days. So I won't have a lot of time to move everything upstairs. It just takes a while. So we're just going to have to deal with cats for a little bit longer. We just are. Saturday, I'm not streaming. I forgot to tell everybody in my last stream. I'm going to an amusement park for a company picnic with my daughter. And I'm not going to stream in the morning and then go to the amusement park. I'm just going to take another day off, which would make 3 total days off this month. Look, guys, no matter what job you have, only taking 3 days off in 1 month is too much work. And it's not like I do this all the time. I never take days off. I go months and months and months and months without day off. So I'm going to an amusement park. I'm going to ride some roller coasters until I throw up. Not really. I love roller coasters. I won't throw up. But I won't be around on Saturday. All right. I will see you tomorrow, though. So have a great day. Behave. Don't go to jail so that you can watch Court 5s tomorrow morning. Bye, guys. Have a great day. See ya. Oh, look, I wasn't muted. Ha.